Hello, this is Jermaine Mack with This Is West, and we got Mr. Zappia here today. I'm going to be asking him a few questions today on the podcast. What brings you to West?
What brought me to West?
Yes, what brought you to West, yes. Mr. Zappia?
I was working in school for about 20 years and not very happy there. And my wife said to me one day, look, you're very passionate about teaching, but you're not happy doing it anymore. We need to move. We need a different environment. My children couldn't grow. I was being suffocated. So we said we moved to Madison. So one day we picked up everything and just moved here. How I found West, actually I got a job at Middleton. I went there for my first day. I was driving home. A guy named Mitch McGrath, the principal here, called me up and said, how would you like to work at West? I said, awesome, working at West. So
how long was he the principal here?
He was here for like maybe 10 years, 12 years. But he was my the first person to say, hey, come on, work for West. And so at that same time, my youngest son was coming to West as a freshman. So what great opportunity to be in a school with your kid. And so my first day at West, I knew one person, my son. My son knew one person, me. And so I came to West.
Do you feel welcomed at West?
I felt very welcomed at West, but this, as I mentioned, being a white middle-aged male, I feel pretty comfortable in most places. There are most places that make me feel uncomfortable. So from my perspective, I felt welcomed by my apartment. The kids, it took me a bit. My old school was pretty much white conservative. It took me a long time to kind of figure out how to make relationships with kids of color and just to kind of fit in a place. So I felt comfortable, but then again, I don't know if I felt at home just yet.
Yeah. Do you feel like teachers and staff were equal to other children? Like they treat all children the same? Do you feel like everybody gets treated the same in the building?
No, of course not. We don't treat everybody the same. I don't know if that's kind of something we do inherently. We should, but we don't. We don't treat everybody the same. In this school, as you look around too, not everyone's treated the same. Not everybody has the same opportunities either.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time, I like to hang with my wife, which is awesome. I like to just, honestly, watch sports, play a little bit of pickleball, walk my dog. That's my therapy. I don't have many people outside of school that I hang out with, which is okay by me. Mm-hmm. So inside school, I have a lot of energy around people. Outside of school, I like to kind of be myself.
And I heard you said you got a son. How many children?
I have two sons.
Two sons.
My oldest son is 23. He never went to high school. He went right to college. Got a degree in chemistry, got a master's at a young age.
That's good.
He's working, doing well, but again, missed out on high school. But he didn't really need the high school experience. Youngest son, Dominic, as I said, came here his first year. He was homeschooled. The first time in public school was in high school. And after 4 years at West, he was a student council president. He really bought into West and really got a lot out of it. So I think all the teachers, all of them had a great experience at West.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you like the West spirit? Does it flow with you, right?
I'm one of those people that as soon as I came here, I put on the West shirt, right? I buy in. Yeah. I like school spirit. I like going to the football games. I like going to the pep rallies. But it's difficult around here. You have so many different groups of people, so many different kinds of factions. It's hard to have some kind of community. And we can say all we want, we develop community, but it's very difficult to develop community at West High School.
Speaking of the football team, we know they got a big game against Middleton tomorrow to make the playoffs.
I hear if they win, they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, do you think they would?
I hope so. I hope so. You never know. That's why you play, right?
I got hope in our boys.
You never know.
I got hope.
Yeah, you never know. They work hard. They deserve it.
I'm late going to class. What is the excuse to let me in?
Well, I don't think start on time is as effective with the yellow passes as food. Yeah. And so when you come in, you bring me a cookie, like a crumble. That's all I need.
Crumble cookie?
You can come in anytime. Oh, hey, crumble cookies.
Look what we got, Mr. Zappia.
See?
Come on, man. Let's
he knows it.
Oh, man. We got
I'm going to have a chocolate chip later on. They look beautiful.
So I got another question.
Yeah.
Speaking of the crumble cookie, I know you don't play about your crumble cookies, Mr. Zappia. So, do your wife let you eat sweets at
When you say, does my wife let me?
Yeah,
First of all, I would never marry anyone that I had to ask permission to do things.
That's what I'm talking.
And my spouse doesn't say, hey, I let him do this. I let him. We don't let each other do it. You do what you like. Right? The idea of let me.
So you're not breaking any rules here, because you know she
make
will
my
see
own
this.
rules. She makes her own rules. I know rules.
As long as we are here.
Hey, I met this woman almost 30 years ago, and to this day, I've never had a question. Never had a doubt.
Never had a doubt.
Nope. Yep. As she says, if Tony doesn't want to do something, It's because he doesn't want to do it.
Did she teach too?
8th grade at Hamilton.
Yeah.
Again, pretty popular teacher. She's a rock star in Hamilton. So I get all these kids come in and say hi to your wife. I'm like, you can say hi to her.
Yeah.
So,
that's nice. That's nice.
It is.
Was this your dream job, working at a school? Like
being a teacher?
That's what you expected, yeah.
I never wanted to be a teacher growing up. I never had any idea of going to college. When I finished college, being a teacher was not on my radar. Mm-hmm. I met a wonderful person who was a teacher. She got me involved in coaching.
Where did you go to college again?
I went to college at UW.
UW,
yeah. But it was one of those things where like, I like being around kids. I really enjoy being around kids. And so I think people get into teaching for 2 reasons. They either love their topic and learn to love kids, or they love kids, they learn to love their topic. I learned to love history. Yeah. I just wanted to be around kids. What was interesting though is when I got my teaching job, and I'm looking at my life, and every other job I had was kind of a teacher. Just didn't know it. Like I adopted that teacher personality. And the way I look at teaching, Jermaine, it's not my job, it's not my profession. It's kind of who I am. It's kind of how I identify myself. I can't just turn it on and off. It's ingrained in who I am.
Yeah.
Because when I moved here, I was gonna leave teaching. I was gonna go to Epic, I was gonna make good money, screw it, gonna have a nice life. I can't leave it. It's who I am. Yeah.
So like, do students ever come in your class with an attitude or with like a certain way that they approach you that you don't appreciate? If so, how would you
know they do?
You
know they do, right?
And I just know that you're a cool guy, so I don't know how students approach.
Here's the rule of thumb that I use, right? When I was younger, I used to coach and teach like I like to be coached and taught.
Yeah.
And now I do that like with my own kids. So if somebody acts up and says, if that was my kid, what would I expect the teacher to do? If that was my kid, what would I expect that teacher to do, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever a kid does that, I say, well, if that was my kid, what would I want the teacher to do? And that's how I treat people. And fair. This is the one thing I learned too, and this is, again, straight up. You know, it was this idea of like closing the gap. Kids of color and white kids. We know there's a big gap there, right? And I used to have this mentality that I have to give my African-American kids more attention, special attention, No, I just have to treat them like everybody else.
Yeah.
And that was kind of hard. I always would want to give some special attention. Hey, you're doing well. But the reality is that treat them like anybody else. And that was one of those things that took me a little while to get into my head a bit too, right?
Yeah. How do you feel about stereotypes in the school, Mr. Zappia?
They're all over the place, right? I mean, I don't think there's an inch of the school that's not have some kind of like race tension in it, right? You feel it in the hallways, you feel it in the classroom, right? You feel it at lunchtime, right? So we talk about stereotypes. We talk about the single story. And one of the mistakes a lot of people will make, again, growing up in teaching in a white suburban area, the only stories and things we hear about people of color are from the television or from the news, and usually that's negative.
Yeah.
Right? So we just assume that if that black person is, again, in the 80s, smoking crack, well, then all black people are smoking crack.
Yeah.
That single story, right? And that if you don't have those other influences, you grow up like that. Mm-hmm. And so you have a large section of society that grows up like that. And so when they're exposed to people of color, they make all these assumptions, they make all these premeditated ideas of who they are based on their stereotypes, right? And again, let's face it, some stereotypes have some truth, right? Mm-hmm. I'm Italian, I like spaghetti, cool, right? But that doesn't mean that I have all those other attributes that people associate with that. And that's something we have to be very careful about. Okay, again, stereotypes, some are good, some are positive, right? They go along with a specific group of people, but they're not everybody. For the most part. So,
speaking of, do you think we have like more privileged kids in the school or like more lower class? Like,
is that a rhetorical question?
I'm just saying, because most people outside of West, I would hear them say like, oh, they're like the more nicer school, like they have a lot of rich people coming from there.
It's because you're rich.
But if you go there, like
right?
I don't think like.
But so here's the problem with West, I believe at least, right? We have a very highly privileged society.
Yeah.
The people live across the street, right? And that's fine. Again, if you're privileged, don't apologize. Just do something with it, right? But we also have a very marginalized group of people. So when everyone says West is privileged, all you're doing is going against those marginalized kids.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to play soccer, you can't play soccer at the school unless you can get rides. And somebody can drive you unless you have privilege, right?
That's right.
And when they say, well, you kids can get there, well, the third of our kids that are marginalized, they can't get there. And so when everyone says West is privileged, that's who you're penalizing. Right? I mean, I think the sports is a great example of that, right? We have to travel for practice, we have to travel too. It alienates so many kids from participating in what we have to offer. And so when people say, oh, West is a rich school, yeah, some of it is, but those kids that aren't, they're the ones that get punished by that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah. Is there any question?
What is your experience at West as a young black African American?
My experience at West, I used to go to it. So I'm a senior now. I used to go to West freshman and sophomore year. My experience at West was great. I moved to Madison La Follette because I moved to McFarland from the south side of where I lived for 13 years. But my experience at West is great. I really like the kids here, and I'm not gonna lie, when I was at La Follette, I missed it, man. But it's like, I don't know, like some teachers, I feel like they don't know how to do their jobs. Not all teachers are living up to like what they're supposed to.
Well, then maybe we need some help.
Yeah.
And some input.
I just feel like
so how can we
they don't treat all students the same.
How can we make West more welcoming, especially to our African American community? What are some things I can do as a white teacher to help you feel more welcomed?
Probably host some clubs or something on, like have a group in here during lunch. Mm-hmm. When you open them, like you always help me, you help me with work. We can make that work with other students. They need it.
And treat them like everybody else.
Because I know it's a lot of clubs around the school already, but some days, homework club, when they not open, you could probably do something here during lunch, not even during school, because you probably got your personal life.
And I always thought like as long as I can make my room more welcoming.
Yeah.
Anybody that walks through that door, you're loved.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, what gender you want, what name you want, you're loved and you walk through my door. Anyone that doesn't show that love doesn't belong in the room. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way I go about it. So that's all we need.
That's for sure.
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Zappia, for your time. This is the main subject, but I may know we'll see y'all next week.